Well, I was getting ready to take this side apart, but I thought I'd go ahead and have you guys to come along. Just a quick overview. The axle comes out in a big tube for you that don't know, and there's two big bearings inside this hub. There's an axle underneath this cap that attaches to the differential that turns this whole hub assembly. First we got to do, I'm going to go ahead and back this caliper off. I've got new calipers, but knowing I have one sticking, I may not be able to. I just try to get it back off enough I can get it off. You have one Allen head bolt and it holds a slider. All the slider does is take up enough space that you can get this off and on, and it floats there. There's really not much to it. Let me get that out right quick. They don't need to be super tight, just tight enough that they don't come out. Set it up here. Actually, I'll put it in my parts box I have. Let's see if I can get this to come out. There it goes. So what you have, that bolt goes into one of these holes, and this is the slider that goes in between the brake rail and the caliper. And all this is, you start that all at the same time and shove it in there till the bolt hole lines up. And this is just a spring that takes up the space, keeps it from rattling around. Now, with any luck, should be able to get this caliper off of here. I take a little persuasion. Like I said, these calipers were sticky anyway, and I have new ones. They've been on here for a while. All right, there we go. You really don't want to hang a big heavy caliper like that off your rubber hose, especially if you plan on reusing it, which I do. Now, I hear a clicking noise, and what that is the spider gear on the differential, rolling the spider gears around. I'm gonna find out by taking the axle out. These axle bearings are lubed by the differential oil. So see what this looks like inside. Little taparoo. And it's pretty gross. You see how it's really thick, kind of nasty looking. It should be differential, very old 80-90. It's either very, very old, or someone's took this apart and packed this up full of grease. Somebody's packed it up full of grease. It could be why we have a failed bearing, or it means we will have a failed bearing. It's oil lube. It's got to circulate. I'll show you the bearings in a second or two. We'll grab a hold. You can see a little bruise. There's your axle shaft. Let me get ready so I don't get too messy. This is greasy, grimy. Go for this right here. Yep, pretty nasty. And there's the spline. It goes in the spider gear. That's in the differential. Flip that over in gravel. I'm going to grab it on there for a while. Now, let me zoom in here in a second. I'll show you how. Sort of see little. Let me get the screwdriver here. Show you. See these little notches. Those little notches have one tab. One of these tabs will line up with that notch, and you bend that tab over, and it keeps that nut from loosening up. So let me find it. First, I'm going to listen before I take it apart. Got a little bit of a noise to it. I don't know if you can hear me, get the mic closer. It's probably not bad, but we'll find out. So I'm trying to find the tab. It's not down. I can just found it. I can get it underneath it, kind of bend it out of that. There you go. So now, where it is, let me see if I can't knock this loose. There you go. Get this off here. I'll show you. They make sockets for this, and you really don't need them. You gotta pay attention to what you're doing. You can destroy the socket just as bad as you can with the socket. And they're out of that. And there's little spaces here that tab washer. Now I'm about to show you, bends over in one of these and keeps it loosened up. Grab it. There you go. So here's your tab washer. There's a hole, a notch in that axle tube that ride on. And then one of these will find your nut that I just took off. And it bends over. You bend it over there with a screwdriver, tap it down, and that won't loosen up. So inside here we have another very similar, if not exactly the same nut. I should be able to get that loose enough. There you go. Now you got a dump truck, 3/4 ton truck, anything with external axles.
And that's this kind of situation. They all come apart in this same way. Some are a little bit different. There's different ways of holding a little lock. Some of them have a little spring clip that holds a little key and keeps them from loosening up. You know, but they all come apart the same way. So there's our inner. It's got the same things. So these go together just like this. And you just bend one of those tabs over into a notch wherever it happens to land, because you've got to adjust preload on these. So if I give this a little pull, another washer, big thick washer, goes underneath the first nut, and here's one of our bearings. I can get it to come out, and it may not come out. Oh golly, that's heavy. All right, let me turn you back on here in a few and I'll show you what I got. All right, this outer bearing's not coming out because there is a retainer, and I should be able to
unnecessary. Try to say, I'll put it back in.
Well, let me flip her over, get the other bearing out, see if that clues me into anything. Huh, I've never seen nothing like this. Since the axle are the wheel bearings on each end, you know, didn't seem to have any troubles, I went ahead and pulled the cover off. There's no excessive play. There's our spider gears. Our carrier bearings are right there, and there's one on the other side. There's no play this way. So I'm going to flush this out best I can, cleany, and hopefully get my big head in there and get a good look at it. See what we can see. Gears all look pretty good. It's not real sure. It could be that there's a bearing going funny. The only way I'd know is to take it apart. So I believe at this point that's what I'm not going to do, and I'll probably have to revisit it at some point. At least I know what I know. There's nothing falling apart, nothing unsafe. So, you know, if one of these bearings was, let me see. Yeah, no metal of any significance, so I guess I'll get her cleaned up, get her resealed. Yay. Nice and clean and dry. Washed her with solvent, soaked it, sprayed it with brake clean, wiped it down. We're going to use you can hardly see that, can you? There you go, Ultra Grade to Permatex. This is some very, very good RTV. Boy, this stuff's came a long way in the last 10 years. All you need to do nice consistent bead between the holes, around the holes, not a whole bunch. As I say that, that's fair. It's a little much over there, but you know. I always like to take a little and go around the outside of the holes. Just a little insurance. Just kind of drag what I got, go around the outside, so I cares too much. So you don't want so much that goes in the holes, and then your bolts will hydraulic in those holes because this stuff doesn't compress, obviously. See, I've got a little bit of a drip right here. Well, we can work our way around that. You just gotta be quick. You just get your cover ready. Transmission pans are the same way. Get the holes lined up. See if I can hold it in place. Get a couple bolts in. I have access to a brake lathe, so I turn these. If you don't have access to a brake lathe, you could probably run these over to your favorite Napa, O'Reilly's. I don't know that all the stores do this sort of thing, but a lot of them do. Just call around, find somebody, nominal charge, and they'll resurface them for you. These rotors probably aren't real expensive. The pain in the butt is to take them apart. You've got to knock all the studs out, separate it from the hub, put the new rotor on, and knock your studs back in. That's what I did on the front ones. If you look, I'll show you a video up here. Hopefully, if I figure that out. Got seals, national seals. They were kind of hard to find, but I've got 2 pair of them. It's because I forgot I ordered the first pair. It's hard to explain. Anyhow, what we got going on here, these bearings. What you see on there is lithium grease. So that once it gets hot, that white lithium grease will melt and turn to oil. That's what we want. Now, if you look inside, remember I had trouble getting these bearings to come out. Well, they don't come out. They're too big for this. I thought, well, that's strange. But I'll show you what I found once I figured it out. There's a snap ring. See that snap ring right there? Right there. You squeeze those together and that snap ring comes out. Once that snap ring comes out, then I can use a long punch and take this race out through the other side. So I went down through here to knock that race out. Then I could roll it up with that snap ring out of there and knock this race down. And that way I can get all the bearings out, clean them, get a good look at them, make sure I didn't have any trouble. I didn't find anything wrong with any of them. So that's definitely not our noise. Put it all back together. So we're ready to put the seals in. The only thing I want to do first before I bother putting those seals in there is make sure they're going to work. Now I'm pretty sure that they look like they would fit pretty good here, so they press in. okay? So I could almost push it in there. We just have to tappy with a block of wood. But I want to make sure this diameter is correct, and we'll go outside to do that. See, it's been a couple weeks since I've taken this apart, and kind of on purpose kind of forgot to clean this axle tube. That's the axle tube. But it's kind of a good thing because of all the rain, the water, the dust, and the dirt sticks to that grease, and nothing's rusted up. So, but right now, what I want to do is, and I thought at first this was all grease, but I believe it's just really old axle grease, axle lube. So what I want to do is, since back here is where our seal rides, I can kind of see, and you always want to check, you can see where it always rides, right? You don't want a big groove right there, okay? But I want to make sure that this diameter is going to fit there. So the seal will go like that in the hub goes on, and it goes right inside there. Actually, the groove's back there if there is one. See, we're all learning something. But I want to make sure that that seal is nice and snug around where it's going to be living at, like right there. And that's going to be good. That tells me I have the right seal. The reason I questioned it, the old seal had a number on it. This one does not, and it was a changeover part number, so I was a little concerned. So let's get the seals installed, and we'll get the hubs out here, get them mounted on. Okay, now we know our seal will fit. Most of your lip seals, the spring inside, the spring that you see on the outside of this seal goes on the inside. So we're going to go like that. Almost all seals are that way. How's that? The main deal with this is to keep the seal going in best you can straight. Not down one side and then trying to beat the other side down, then you'll just destroy the seal. Luckily I got a couple other seals, but so I'll put the board on there. I'm gonna hit right in the center. Then I felt it go clunk. See that? All right, so now it's a little high on this side. Get a little tappy-roo. Now as I'm going, I got my fingers right there, so I can feel the highs and the lows, so it's a little bit high right here. Once you get about halfway down, you're good. What I want to do, and you see that red stuff? That's actually a sealer. It's going to peel off the high spots inside here and fill in the low spots, so you don't have a grease leak through there. It's a little bit high right here, right there, right there. I just want to make sure this is flush to the hub. That's going to help me make sure that it's in there straight. You don't want it in there crooked because it's going like this on that axle tube, and it's going to wear that seal out in a hurry. So straight as you can get it. You can kind of hear it get solid, and that tells me we're flat. See, we're flat all the way around, so we're good. So, there we go. So that outer race wants to get stuck. There we go. And we're on there. Now, washer, it's got a little tang in it, and there's a slot in the tube itself. So that goes in that tang against your outer bearing. Then you take a nut. There's 4 of these, and they're all the same. The little slots go pointed out towards you. If I can get this one started. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. They, like I said, I might even have a socket for this actually, come to think about it. but you may not, so I'm gonna do it without it. Get her started. Now the whole plan here is we don't want any play in those bearings. We got audio. Let me make sure, huh? We got audio? I think so. Well, I hope so. I don't like doing the voiceover stuff. Sometimes you take a screwdriver to help you get her turned in there a little bit. Snugged up, right? This is basically like any other kind of taper bearing, you know, like your old Malibu station wagon with the front disc brakes or the front drum brakes, and there's bearings. They're exactly like this. They're just smaller. But you snug them down just the same way. So I've got them snug. There's no in play, right? We don't want any play. But these bearings like to be preloaded. So all I want to do is load them bearings up. There's probably a torque spec if you wanted to look it up, if you had the socket. That's what we want. Now, if I remember right, one of them was loose to where there was a little bit of play in it, and that could have been all the noise we heard. I was hearing. All right, I'm gonna get my hammer. I'm gonna show you why in a second. Now, like I was saying, this nut's just like the one I just screwed in there. The little spots on it. I want to grab that, one of those edges, and that's it. It shouldn't drag. It should be just about like that. And it shouldn't spin really easy either. You want a little bit of load on those bearings. Reason is, you start getting some wear on those bearings. If you just went to zero load and no in play, about 10 miles down the road, you're gonna have some in play because those things are gonna settle in and seat in. We want some preload so when they settle in and seat in, there's still no play there. Make sense? So now, this funky looking thing, this goes in the same tab as the first washer did right here. So what happens is, when we tighten this up, the second one against the other nut, it'll stop somewhere around here or around here, wherever, and we fold one of these tabs over. That keeps this from backing off. If this doesn't back off, the one on the inside can't move. And that's the premise behind all that. So get that in there. Okay? Then do our best to start Mr. Nut. Feeling a little shaky. Too many Diet Mountain Dews, I guess. There we go. So you want to get that. We need to tighten this down enough that one of those lock foldy sheet metal things lines up with the tab. Now these can be pretty tight because you're not turning that other one, you're not changing your preload. You're just locking it all down. If you don't get this tight, the other nut could back off. There we go. I'm going to go right there. Now, I've got one of those tabs lined up with a notch in that nut. So we're going to grab a hold of her, bend it over, and then sink it home with the hammer and a screwdriver. right, nothing's gonna loosen up now. Let me get you in here for a closer look. Now you can see some of these other tanks, how they don't line up. The way these are set up, only one at one time can line up. And that one's lined up, so I bent it over and knocked it into that groove. Now that nut's not gonna loosen up. Now you have an axle shaft. If you wanna look, maybe you can see the thick gooiness all over that. We wanna get that cleaned off, and there's a reason. The reason, this is what gets the oil, or rather the differential oil. This is what gets it out here, out to the bearings that we just put in. See that? Oh, what a nice, smooth, clean surface. I might take a couple boxes of these rags, because as these spin, they pull oil down through them, and oil's going to come through here, and it's going to drop inside that cavity and fill this up with oil. That's why you don't want to pack those bearings with grease, because you'll actually starve them for oil. When all they've got is grease, the old timers will pack them full of grease like they are regular wheel bearings. I've seen that ruin bearings like this. That's why I used white lithium grease, so it'll have a certain amount of pre-lubrication until the oil gets out. Okay, that's going to do it. That's all we do. There's your splines. Those splines go into the differential. Kind of rock around. Okay, there we go. And then it should go. Voila. Now there's a cover. So let me go get it. We'll get it straight. All right, there's our cover. There is a gasket in here. Anytime I've seen stuff similar to this, these never leak, unless you just tear a big hole in them. But I am going to do just something a little extra. If I can get it open. Good old Permatex Super Gray, or it's Ultra Black. So either way, pretty good stuff nowadays, you know. So we just want to put a little bit on here. We don't have a whole, we need to have a whole bunch. Just a skim coat. All right. We got our 5 bolts ready. There's 1. 2. And all this cap does is holds the oil in there. So it'll go sling all over your nice Alcoa wheels. Well, hold on. There we go. Alright, get this tightened up. Got everything together. Our old caliper is still hooked up to the line. And there's a reason for that. I'm not going to bleed these until in the morning. So in the morning, we'll leave it all together and I'll put my line on the new caliper. So I diligently cleaned my old hardware. Just a little wire brush is all you would have to do. But the calipers came with new hardware. You're going to want some grease. This is brake lube. If you don't have anything like this is made for this. You can use just a touch of axle grease or something in your grease gun. Just a touch. Just same thing. You don't want this on your brake pads or your brake rotors. So we're gonna get that on there. That on there. Now there's 2 places where the rear pad rides into the brake rail, like so, but it goes back here. So these places here need lubed. They need cleaned as well, like I did with that little wire brush. So you want things to be able to move in there. You don't want it to get sticky and drag. So you get a little lube in there. ain't got to be perfect. You get anything on your rotor, just wipe it off. Should be able to. Pop those right in there. Now, for most of your brake pads like these, will have a anti-rattle kind of area on them. If everything's done right, if you see the crosshatch in that rotor surface, if that was super smooth, these will have a hard time breaking in, believe it or not. You want to have a little bit of a texture on there to break these in. And the reason is, and I've explained this to guys at work all the time, if you don't have that, it won't cut into this surface. This is rough. This isn't smooth at all. If that's really smooth and this is softer than that metal, you're going to have hot spots all over this brake pad, both of them. Because naturally you're going to put your foot on the floor and make it stop. If you got some roughness on there, this little cross hatching, you just touch the brake, it's going to stop. The pads aren't going to get near as hot, they'll get broken more properly, and so therefore you don't need a bunch of goo on here. In rare instances, there's reasons you should have. These I'm not, and these brakes will not squeak. Even these cheap pads, you can see all the metal in them, they're not going to squeak because you're going to get it broke in properly. I live by it all the time. I don't have brake squeaks come back at work like the other guys. So, get our brand new caliper ready. We'll stick a brake pad in there. It just goes in there. Now after, you can notice it can rattle. So once we get it together, we're going to pry up right here and bend these tabs down. These are the same brakes that Chrysler used to use years ago. So we're just going to slide her on there. Now this little step hooks in there. And there we go. There's a hole in the side of the brake rail, but it's down there. But I'm pointing up here so you can see better. This is the anti-rattle spring. Okay. Should be. There we go. That's going to go just like that. So we're going to jam it in there and slide it in, and this spring will flatten out. I think I'm going to put a little lube on the caliper so I don't have to put lube on that and get all nasty. Oh yeah. Just slide it right in there. We want that lubed up. We don't want this getting sticky and getting, you know. So should be, I can lift up on it and get this started, I believe. There we go. Now I'll take my hammer and my screwdriver and we'll tap her in there until a hole's lined up. There's one hole, and that's where the bolt goes in. Right there. Came with a new bolt. They're from Rock Auto. I think these calipers are about $50 for the pair. There's a shoulder on that bolt. That slider thing has got a U-shaped hole in it, so you don't want that shoulder to tighten on top of that. You want it to go inside that U-shape, that opening shape that keeps that from coming out. That's about all it does. It doesn't hold it tight. It just keeps it from coming out. Found my Allen wrench. And there it goes. It went right inside there. You're nice and tight. That'll work. There we go. So we get the other side done, and in the morning when it's a little bit cooler out and I'm a little more rested, we'll hook up the brake lines and start bleeding the brakes. And I'll explain tomorrow why we're going to wait to hook those lines up. Oh yeah, right here. Get that screwdriver in there, give it a twist, and I'm going to try to bend these tabs down best I can. Good morning. All right, I'm going to swap these lines over. So all you have is basically a banjo bolt it's called. So there's your bolt, and there's your two washers. They're copper washers. They're copper so that they crush, because that's what makes them seal. You have to keep that in mind. Now, get my old line off. There's the old line. I don't know if you can see that. Well, if I can get these old copper washers will stick. Now you may not be able to see, but I've got good fluid flow. Through the line. It tells me the line's okay. Try not to lose too much fluid. And there's a reason for that. Screws on the back of the caliper there. Want to crank her down. Remember, they crush. So you don't want to strip it out, but you want to crush those washers just a little bit. Now, look up here where I can see you. So, deal is, if I'd have hooked these lines up overnight, the air, without bleeding them anyway, the air, as the fluid drips into the caliper, the air works its way up, because air wants to go up in fluid, right? So overnight it would have filled these calipers up, but all the air would have been up in the master cylinder. You get air in the master cylinder, then you need a helper, somebody to pump the brakes, and you're hollering, you know, pump it, let off, okay, let off, pump it again, and you're blowing 18 gallons of brake fluid everywhere, and it's unnecessary. So now that I've just hooked this one up, I'll go do the other one really quick. I'll pop the reservoir cap off, make sure it's full of fluid, and then I'll break these bleeders loose. The air that's in the calipers, the new calipers, will come out of the bleeder instead of the other way around. Then all we do is wait for the fluid to come out of the bleeders, tighten the bleeders up, pump the pedal a couple times, and it'll compress any kind of air. And then when you break them loose again, the bleeders, a couple bubbles of air, and we're done. Don't need no help that way. That's how I like it. Let me get the other side done. There's the master cylinder. You gotta take a screwdriver and pop that one off, take the cover off. You don't have a whole lot of room above it, but you can kind of get your head in here. This is the driver's feet is right there, if you don't know. So it's a little hard to get to. Let me get in there and get that filled up. Everything bled out, pedal feels good, it's all sealed up, topped off. Now we're going to use some brake clean or carburetor cleaner, whatever you have handy, and wash that brake fluid away. Get inside that bleeder and wash that brake fluid out. A couple reasons. We want to make sure that if we have a leak, we can see it, because it's not got brake fluid all over it. If it does leak, we'll see where it's coming from. And brake fluid's really bad on anything painted. It will eat the paint right off. Then make it rust in a hurry. So even on the master cylinder, where I've dumped fluid on it from trying to get fluid in it, spray all that off, spray everything off really good, and then put gear lube in that great big differential before I forget and go driving down the road. Yeah, we got to do that. Differential's filled up. 3 quarts of 80/90, some synthetic stuff. Somebody's turned the heat up out here. Now we can see if we can get the wheels and tires back on. Of course, it's sat here for a month and it's probably sunk down into the ground, so probably not. Alright, got the old grill running. Let it down. It sunk a little bit. I was able to get the jack stands. I said big jack stands along with the leveling jacks holding it up. Got the jack stands out. Was able to let it down. One of the jacks are stuck because the airbags have deflated after sitting. So put the wheels on with an air impact, but that didn't take them off. This took them off, right? So I got to put it back on with this. We'll go for a test drive here in a bit, and then I'm going to go over them again with this. You don't want those wheels coming off. Now you just sit right there. Good runner. Now, really all I want to do is kind of take the country mile, listen for my noise I'm hoping is magically gone. Get the brakes broke in. We want to get on and off of them. Clear. Well, you don't go nowhere fast in this thing. Pretty sure the noise is gone that I was hearing. Still have a vibration. This is what you call a rolling project. A 69 Nova. Where he wants to sell that. I just get in trouble anyway. I'm not hearing the noise I was hearing. Time will tell, I guess. Yeah, get your brakes broke in, kid. Just kind of on and off the brake a little bit. Enough to scrub them in without getting them hot. That's all you want. Especially if you do brakes for somebody else, because they won't do that. You want to make sure you do. Because they're just going to put their foot on the brake and not think nothing about it. Tell you guys what, I appreciate you watching. Hope you have a good week. And don't attempt something like this on this big of a vehicle unless you're sure about what you're doing. If you're not, don't get underneath it. It's big and it's heavy. Just be careful. Alright. See you guys next week. Junk out. Oh, I was supposed to turn there. Let's see if the brakes work now. Yeah, they're fine.